You are listening to Accents, a radio show for literature, art, and culture. I'm your host, Katerina Stoikova, and my guest today is writer, publisher, teacher, and artist, Laverne Zabielski. Hi, Laverne. Welcome to the show again.
Hey, Katerina. It's great to be here.
It's great talking to you. Last time we met face-to-face in the studio, and we had so much fun that I thought we can talk some more about creativity and the importance of creative life, and how do you do that fearlessly, the way that you have been doing it seems like all your life.
It's a never-ending story process.
So can you tell us a few words about how we can include creativity in our daily lives?
Well, I guess just see everything that happens as an opportunity to be creatively, to respond creatively, to be able to take a breath and see what can I do with this situation. And one of the things I have written about actually kind of talks about that a little bit. As far as a writing practice, writing regularly makes a big difference. I think now that I've been writing for many years, I've got 10,000 hours in, and I think we talked briefly about 10,000 hours makes beautiful music, Suzuki said, and there is the idea that if you do something often enough, then you begin to go deeper. And I think after all these years, that's really true. You begin to trust yourself more if you just can confront that voice that's criticizing you all the time and move on. So basically, it's just do it.
And how about if, like yourself, you have many different talents and many different interests, and you happen to be creative and great at every one of them. In Bulgarian, there is an expression which says that you cannot carry 2 watermelons in one armpit.
Well, maybe being creative is only one watermelon.
That is a wonderful way to look at it. Being creative is only one watermelon. So, and then there are the seeds, and there is the flesh, and there is the rind.
And there's the color.
And there is the color, yeah. And there is the color. You have brought for us to read something special. What are you going to read for us?
Well, after writing a long time, I have kind of come up with a little bit of a theory that all writing counts. I remember when I used to do writing workshops in GED classes and different kinds of programs in order to encourage people to write who aren't used to it. I would say things like, well, you could write your grocery list, you could write a recipe, you could write a to-do list. And on the one hand, I was making that up as I kind of went along, like, how am I going to do this class? But on the other hand, it produced some pretty amazing things. You think your grocery list is not unique, but it is. And within that list is lots of stories. So what I brought today is just having something of a regular practice of writing almost every day, almost to the point now that I'm at the point I'm like thinking, I have to like slow down a little bit because you want to take pieces to another level. You don't want to just keep writing in your journal. But on the other hand, I feel like we discount what we write in our journal. We don't go back and look at it. We don't read it. We don't see that there's little gems in there, one-liners, very short poems, or maybe a nugget for a longer piece of writing. So what I brought today is 6, as though it's a weekly writing, 6 different pieces that I have written that I haven't spent a lot of time working on and developing. They're not necessarily something I would submit to a contest or anything like that. But on the other hand, I think each one of them has a little gem, has a little piece of wisdom in there that has something worth sharing. And so, and it's like kind of part of how I got to this was I went to a women's writers conference once, and there was a woman from New York City. I think she was a Latino woman, Puerto Rican perhaps. And she made this documentary, she made this film, and she took us into where she lived and up the stairs and into her house and into her kitchen. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This is really unique. I really like this. And then I started like kind of feeling sorry for myself because her culture seemed so rich and mine didn't. And then it dawned on me that, well, this is her everyday life, and what I have to capture in my world is my everyday life. So that's a lot of what I write about and kind of what these little pieces are.
Which is as unique as your grocery shopping list.
Exactly.
Everyday life.
Exactly.
Before you start reading, I have a question that I ask all my guests who teach creative writing, and that is, what is the most important thing you teach your students? If there is one thing that you want them to walk, you know, just to keep and carry forward from your class, what is it?
Well, probably I've kind of said it, that all writing counts and don't second guess. Really, second guessing your thoughts is probably the worst thing you can do. So if you just put them down, no matter what, that's where you're going to find the gems and the jewels. So I would say that's probably the most important thing.
Okay, thank you, Laverne. And I would love to hear some of your writing now.
Okay, well, I'm calling this Monday, but I'm thinking a lot about community, and I'm saying that community is the ultimate art. It was suggested that I admire my bravery for growth, no matter what happens. Fortunately, having an art practice allows me to do that, and I encourage others to develop one also. An art practice happens when you value the process as much as what gets created. That's where the growth lives. The act of sharing your art is where bravery lives. Bravery feeds our growth, keeps us happy and healthy, broadens our community. The older we become, the more need for bravery. One of the consequences of age is that we've seen more, we experience more, we must be brave. There are more people in our life, and their suffering touches us. Our creative process is how we prevent suffering from overtaking us and leave room in our hearts to comfort others without taking on their suffering. That's a biggie for me. I want to fix everyone's problem in ways that are not sustainable. I feel the weight of this desire in my shoulders, the back of my neck. My body sends me warnings in the form of headaches, and anxiety lives in the pit of my stomach. The phrase, the art of, has become vogue these days. Everyone is an artisan. At first I was offended. I saw it as a marketing jargon without substance. Now I see it as problem solving. I have expanded my definition of art to include anything that has problems to solve. Your creativity comes into play when you implement the solutions revealed. For instance, for my son, rock climbing has become an art with numerous problems presented with each rock. After assessing the situation, he comes up with a solution and proceeds, keeping the most important factor in mind: I don't care. Of course, he cares that he is safe. What he doesn't care about is what others think about his solution, the path he chooses, slow and around, straight up, or that he even asks for help when needed. And then he shares. When we share our accomplishments, community is created, the ultimate art. Community lives in the act of sharing of what you create. That was Monday. Tuesday. The word that I used as a prompt was creative threads. Thinking, making, reading, writing, producing, and publishing. I've learned to be tender, touch softly. My listening is deepening. I have learned to look gently, to breathe slow and intense. I am reading What Artists Do by Leonard Cohen. It's not that complicated. More of us do what he just suggests than we realize. That's good. And for me, wearing a little art is an easy way to bring out my artist self. I give pause and ask, who am I now? Complicated. My life is full of textures. I wear shawls pieced and layered with shibori silk. You probably think that's because I think they make me look good. They do. But what's really important is they make me feel good. Who will I become? Complete. I will determine what my art is and make more of it. When I wear art and look at it and see the beautiful colors, I feel better. What keeps me alive? Creating my own problems to solve aesthetically. Finding fabric to design, dye, or repurpose. This is what keeps me from falling down. What will I let go of and then notice a shift? Any lingering fears of standing out and being heard. My goal? To bring delight with elegance and manifest harmony and balance and be kind. Wednesday. Today's color recipe. Begin with violet purple, the color of purple aster and amethyst, full of imagination and spirituality. Let a touch of lilac's youthfulness leak out as in the light spots of the upper wings of the peacock butterfly. And illuminating yellow to the harmony of add illuminating yellow to the harmony of emerald for a green that's the color of a ripe pear and pairs elegantly with the wing of a goldfinch or jasmine. Delicious.
These are so beautiful, Laverne. So heartfelt and real and wonderfully written. And you also are the author of Writing Impressions, a journal. And I don't believe this is the only one, right? You have multiple journals published.
I have a few others and a few others that I'm working on.
Could you speak a little bit about the process of selecting either a time period or selecting particular journal entries, or how does it work for you?
Well, in the past, I would select things for small chapbooks a little bit more based on the topic. But now I'm in more of a time of the essence mode, being older. I'm working on a 20-year plan, which means what am I going to be doing when I'm 93? And so I'm focusing more on year by year, what's happening. And I'm also trusting what comes in from the past. So most of my journals that I'm doing right now are what's happening now. But if I have a memory of a situation that happened many years ago, I will insert that also. I really want to bring together so much of what I've written, and I really don't want to spend a lot of time looking for it and thinking about it and organizing it in a particular way so that that's all that happens, the looking and the thinking. So I'm listening to my body, that's the important thing. So I'm writing about what's happening now, I'm capturing the gems, and then if something from the past comes in to my awareness right now, then I will seek that and insert it. And
so that sounds like these journal books that you're publishing right now are more like checkpoints on your journey.
Especially from, yes, from definitely from this point on. And you know, what you remember from the past, you remember because they were significant and they probably relate to something that's going on now. So without a whole lot of thinking, you don't have to think about how does this fit. It fits because it came in, and I'm trusting that process.
That is really, really very interesting because many people do topical books, And I know that it takes, I'm speaking about poetry books here, and it takes a long time to write the poems, and then it takes sometimes just as long to craft it together into a topical masterpiece, let's call it that way. But what you're saying is, here's where I am on my journey. Here is what is relevant to me right now. This is what I want to package, capture, and present.
Right.
Yeah. Here is the related question. What are you doing on your 93rd birthday? What are you doing when you're 93?
Oh, that's a good one. Let's visualize this right now. On my 93rd birthday, then I will have a gathering where I will have, as an installation, a collection of the art and all of the books that I have published, whether with a print or as artist books, handmade, and will be one big installation complete.
That is wonderful. And how many books will be there?
Well, at least 20 printed if I stay with my goal of one a year. And, you know, I mean, I've made artist books from the point of view of handmade, one book at a time, or small ones. You know, I like to do that too. So I don't know how many those will seep in.
So if I want to make a 20-year-old plan for me, what should I take into consideration? How do I go about doing that? I really want to know, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this afternoon.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I did do a workshop a long time ago, and really, the best way to go about doing it is you write down what you want to do, like in, you know, in 3 months, and then in a year. And that's easy. That plan will be very long, because you know what you want to do pretty much in 3 months, and even then into a year. But then when you go in 5 years, and then 15 years, 10 years, it starts to get a little bit harder to do, because it's so far out. And then when you do get to 20 years and beyond, it's even harder. But you'll find that there's something that will carry over year by year. And when I first did that, you know, what I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to write every day. I wanted to have flowers in my yard. I wanted a picket fence. And you saw my little picket fence. It's my dog yard, but it's still my picket fence. You know, and I wanted the freedom to do those. At the first time I did this exercise, that was one of the things that kind of carried over, you know, that I would repeat. And so now I am looking at my new goals as far as self-publishing work and creating artist books, and then really being able to interact with the community. And we talked about that a little bit as far as how we teach and we share our work, because right now we're doing a lot of this on Zoom and things. Hopefully that won't be forever, but when we are much older, we are not necessarily going to be wanting to go out all the time and do the teaching. We want to develop ways to interact people with whatever technology there is, or people will be coming to us. So that's another part of my vision, what I will have accumulated, but how am I interacting with people?
Fascinating, wonderful to know. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a good work to do.
I will send you a separate email with, you know, the highlights of my plan. That is really, really fascinating. I want to ask you about self-publishing, publishing, and self-publishing. Who is self-publishing for?
Well, well, for one thing, I've been writing and with the writing community for, you know, almost 40 years. And if we look around and say, if we've been writing 5, 10, 15 years and we don't have a book published, it just seems likely that we need to take another step on our own, number one. Number two, it's unrealistic at this point to think that there are enough publishers out there to publish all the writing that's going on. I mean, we have been doing our work as writers. We've been teaching people to write. We've been empowering them. So we have created millions of writers as a
Right.
result of the kind of work we've done. And there aren't that many publishers to publish our work. And the other thing is to let go of the waiting for someone else to say, this is good, I want to publish it. And lastly, we cannot end our lives with all of these amazing stories and poetries and files on the computers and in boxes in the attic. It's almost like not nice. It's not fair. So in one form or another, I think they should be put in a way that can be gleaned and seen. They're not going to be they're not going to be found. And that these are the artifacts of our life, and people need to be able to have access to them.
And people can keep those points in mind when they're creating their 20-year plans.
Yes. And I'm finding that there's two kinds of people that seek out self-publishing, and it's two totally different strategies. And one is are those that want to self-publish and they want to sell a lot of books. Well, that means you're starting a business. That means you're developing a marketing plan. That means you have to do all of these things to market your book. You have to figure out how to get on Amazon and all of these various sites. I mean, these are all the things the publisher does for you. And therefore you can make less money on your book because they're having to spend all of their money doing all of this. But if you don't have a publisher and you have to do it yourself, then you have to spend the money to have the editor. You have to spend the money to learn about the marketing of it and all of that. There's another kind of a person who is also desires self-publishing, and that's people that are truly creating some artifacts that they want to share a lot with their immediate family, immediate friends. I mean, that could be 200, 500 people. It can be a lot of people, but it doesn't require the mass marketing and research and study that you have to do to get into a lot of bookstores. That's not necessarily the only purpose for self-publishing.
And there are those who do both. Certain projects they self-publish, and certain projects they publish traditionally, whatever makes sense.
Exactly, and when you pay attention to what it takes to self-publish, everything you do is necessary to get published. You know, the editing that you do, the organizing, the thinking, the identifying your audience, the purpose, all of that, it's the same kind of work. What you're letting go of is the dismay because you weren't able to find that publisher. And you're finally saying, okay, I like this, I can do it.
Yeah, every step of the process needs evaluation. The thing with self-publishing is that often you're the only one evaluating, and sometimes you need help with those decisions.
Exactly, and that's what seeking out an editor will do. And odds are, most of your work you have already workshopped, you have already discussed with people, so you've had a lot of input already.
And there are people such as Laverne who help writers who want to self-publish and guide them through the process.
Right, right.
And Laverne, you have more writing to read for us, and I would love to hear.
Okay, Thursday, how do I write a rant list? That is empowering in the same way that I strive to change opinions into questions. If the act of making a list is to put things in order, how does one order a rant list? How do I use my rant list to keep track of memories, providing an intriguing walk down memory lane? The only thing I'd like to get off my chest right now is the inability, the difficulty to accept the fact that no matter how hard I tried to make the right decisions, no matter how hard I tried to raise my children to have beautiful lives, struggle still appears. And no matter how hard I try to embrace the struggle, find the opportunity within, it is so hard. Friday. Something I do kind of regularly is a 5 things I notice process. So this is 5 things I notice. How difficult it is to get going in the morning when I don't sleep well at night because my dog wakes me up in the middle, my old dog. 2, the value of taking a hot, cold shower first thing to energize me. 3, how much energy I get from being creative, writing, and sharing. 4, the value in taking what I've written, creating it into an artist book, and ordering 2 sample copies. And 5, even when there are no tears to see, they are sitting inside your cheeks. Saturday. On how we are the same and different, pursuing our true purpose. I have known you for many years. You are a goddess, childlike, a spiritual seeker. You flow, move easily, impart wisdom with heightened sexual awareness, owning and embracing your body. You were an artist before I knew anything about the world of art. Your sculptured clitoris revealed everything I needed to know. Your intelligent mind captivated and captivates with kind, considerate, caring attentiveness. Your brushstrokes, intense and vibrant, become soothing, softening, tranquility sets in. Your words elicit. You have lived in the world of poetry before I knew such a world existed. Taking risks in relationships, pursuing pleasure and desire. You are a goddess temporarily caught in the maya of mass despair. Your pursuit of words and textures smeared into knowing, spread across your canvas, waiting.
Thank you so much, Laverne. Can you speak to us about writing to dismantle racism?
Well, I think that, I have been doing a lot of workshops over the past 20 or 30 years. This is a conversation many of us have been having. And often these workshops have always been very multicultural, very diverse. And as a white woman, I find that I'm constantly seeking other people's input on how I'm supposed to address with these various situations of racism and privilege. And as a white woman, the 2 things that I think I do, and many of us do, is that, especially if we grew up in less than prosperous situations, we question our privilege. Privilege? We don't think that we're privileged. And we question that we would have any racist or any racism within us. But the deeper we go and the more we learn as being white people, that so much of the racism is just built into the culture we were raised in. So I believe that the way we dismantle it is to look at the stories we tell, look at the memories from our past, and extricate all of the defense, all of the apologizing, all of the justifying of the story, and just get to the nitty-gritty of what is. And then there we can begin to see where the racism lived amongst us. And I most recently have been reading Ibram, I'm not very good at pronouncing his name, Ibram Kendi, and his book on dismantling racism. And his quote is that the only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it, then dismantle it. So that's what I'm looking at, how we can do that in our writing. We can't do that until we write the stories and we capture the memories. So for instance, friend mentioned that we were having this conversation. And she said, well, there are no Black kids in my elementary school. And I said, well, that could be a poem. And I also realized it was true for me. And so yes, I remember that. No, I don't remember that. I never thought about that fact until she put it on the page, until she said it. Well, now, because of what I've learned and I've studied, I'm like, okay, so this is where redlining played out, that we have read about, you know, how certain areas, you know, were only allowed to sell property to white people. I never made that distinction. So now I get a sense of where my privilege came, you know, how privileged I am. But I was only, because I'm white, my parents are white, we were able to buy a house in that neighborhood along with everyone else. That was privilege. We weren't rich. We didn't have a lot of money. We had 7 kids. You know, we would drink powdered milk, but I can begin to see my privilege. So another one is going back, and this is how, as white people, we manifest our power over. We think of patriarchy and we think of men having power over, but as white people and white women, how do we have power over? So this is a memory that will contain my power over. And so we're sitting at the dinner table growing up, talking about the school dance. I'm like 16 or 17. And my dad says, don't be dancing with the no Black guys, Black boys. But daddy. So you see, if I strip away the but daddy is trying to let everybody know, but wait a minute, I had a conscience, I'm cool, I know that wasn't okay. But see, that isn't really facing the racism that was present at my dinner table. And I can also to go on and justify, well, my dad was really cool. My parents were really aware. My dad was, you know, marching for, not marching literally, but pacing in the house for solidarity, you know, for the Polish people and all of that. So he's cool. I could tell you all of that, but that's all manifesting my power over. The fact is, he said, don't be dancing with no white boys, period. So that's how I think we as white people need to talk each other. We don't know the answers and we don't know how to do it. I mean, this is game on. This is a whole new ball game. And so we have to be willing, as I said earlier, as writers to take risks. So we have to be willing to take risks as white people to talk about these issues without trying to feel like we have to go to somebody else to say, well, is that right? Am I doing this right? Am I thinking this right? That's dismantling racism for me.
To be willing to hear the other's opinion, to be willing to have empathy about somebody else's experience.
Yes.
Of, I guess, of the same school dance, you know?
Right.
Different people at the same school dance have different experiences.
And I think we're afraid to often say things because we want to look good. We want to sound good. And we would rather just have a lot of amazing point of views and opinions on things. And there's an article out right now about the conversation industrial complex. And it's like how we have just gone conversation crazy. So all we do is talk about stuff. We philosophize about it. We talk about how we're not, what good things we do. We don't get down to the nitty gritty of it because we're afraid too of being not cool, being called out.
Do you think it's easier for the newer generations to change things than? That's probably a leading question. Do you think? I think that it would be easier for the people who are growing up now, you know, for newer generations to. I guess they have less baggage. They will have less baggage to bring But then again, as an immigrant, that is an issue that I feel sorely unqualified to make statements about. Although I'm very, very, very willing to listen to other people.
Well, the thing about young people, it depends on who they're growing up with and who their parents are.
That's,
you know,
yes,
so.
True. And my last questions for you, they pertain to your fabric making and silk dyeing and your work with these beautiful shawls and materials and jackets that you've been making.
Well, I started dyeing silk to make shawls. I actually was influenced by Frida Kahlo and how outrageous she dressed. And so I started making shawls just under that kind of an influence. I also was doing a lot of poetry readings, and you know, I'm not a big church going person. I don't really ever have any occasion to dress up. And it dawned on me that the most important thing I was doing was going to the poetry readings. And so I wanted to really dress up. And so that became part of my creating things to wear for when I would read my work. And then I also figured out, that's when I started making artist books, because I wanted my work to be presented in such a way. And so I was dyeing fabric to do all of that. And then more currently, you know, paying a lot of attention to the sustainability of clothing and fibers, and how do we repurpose all these fabrics. And so I've been doing a lot of that, taking old clothes, cutting them up, and then using a felting machine to merge the fabrics together to make one new fabric out of it.
I love the idea of dressing up and creating something to be beautiful for a poetry reading.
Yeah, it is kind of fun.
Yeah. So you know, that reminds me of a quote by Chekhov, I believe, who says that in a person, everything must be beautiful. The face, the clothes, the thoughts, the speech, everything.
Well, you know, when you just quickly understand the principles of art and design, which are, you know, basically rhythm and texture and movement, and then you bring those aspects to everything you do, then including your writing, then you have a creative life. So that's you know, that's what I think he's saying. You just bring all of those little aspects together.
And we just brought our conversation full circle. And the first thing that we started talking about was about the importance of having a creative life. And it seems to me, Laverne, that you have been leading a creative life since you remember yourself all your life and for the next 20 years, you know, because you already have a plan for it, you know, and you want to be 93 and having 20 books lined up with your words and your creations, and your work needs to be celebrated. You need to be celebrated. Thank you so much for coming on Accents. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Katerina. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk again.
Okay. No,
Appreciate
for sure.
you. Yeah.